Do you work at the present time?
Yes,
What is your job?
homicides and robberies. I was riding around, you know, looking for looking for some more motherfuckers that beat me for some money, you know. And he didn't, they wasn't at home, so I couldn't kill them, you know. One of them owed me $8, the other one owed me 10, but they wasn't at home, so I ain't kill them. But being that I was in the killing mood, I decided to look for Ricky, you know. And I found him, and he just stood there, and I see some tears coming from his eyes. I say, "You want it right here?" He said, "Yeah." And I just reached out and shot him.
The Potosi Correctional Center.
This call is from a correctional facility and may be monitored and recorded.
To accept this free call, press 1. To refuse this free call, press 2. Thank you for using Securus. You may start the conversation now.
All right, so tell me about how it was it for you growing up in or what part of St. Louis did you grow up?
Yeah, well, mostly I grew up in Walnut Park and Fort Twain. That's where I grew up through the late '70s through preschool, kindergarten, middle schools. I grew up in mostly Walnut Park, Fort Twain area. Uh, you know, lived on mostly throughout the north side.
All right,
It was,
so
a lot of games out. This was before Crips and Bloods, so it was really just all of St. Louis was just all local games. We had 50 different local games where people were playing in whole neighborhoods instead of compared to now how they do it now, just playing blocks. So we was the North Side Pop, back then. That's what we was calling ourselves.
all right, so around that, how was St. Louis growing up? Was it still white people in that area? Was it no white people in that area?
No, and no, not, it wasn't. It was one white person on I lived on Geraldine back then. And right now that's a Crip that is called the 50 block. And it was it wasn't no white people. It was one white lady lived on our street, and I believe that's probably the only white person in the whole neighborhood.
All right, so did you get into was the drugs already in the neighborhood around that time?
No, it wasn't no drugs. It really wasn't no drugs back then. This was before crack and all that. I'm 54 years old now, so this is back in the late '70s and early '80s, '81, '82, '83, all the way up to like '85, '86. In that area. So it really wasn't no crack out there, and it wasn't really no drugs out, like that in the street.
So what
Especially
was
for young.
the local gangs that was around at that time in on the early '80s, mid '80s?
We was the North Side Posse in the middle and late '80s. We was the North Side Posse. We had the South Side Posse, which was over in the project Peabody and the Webbies. They was the South Side Posse, all of them over there. Then you had the Redbud crew. A lot of guys over there. Hope and Redbud. You had the West Side Mobs, who really was over the whole West Side. You had the Whole Lord over the West Side. They was static and with the West Side mob. You had the Bad Boys in the Academy Court. You had the BODs on Blackstone and Page. You had rapper groups. The Golden Boys and different other groups. Those were the main gangs back then. And then you had the JVL boys over on all the JVL. You had the Thundercats over the Cleveland Town. So, you had like I said back then it was we didn't claim blocks. We claimed whole neighborhoods. The West Side Mob and the whole Lord, they was over the whole West Side with the PODs, the Bad Boys in the Academy Court, the PODs, Blackstone, West Side Mob over the whole West Side. So Those basically just all different handful of gangs. Instead of now it's just Crip, you either Crip or you either Blood. Before that it was 100 gangs. Well, we were staticking with a lot of these, guys, but mainly our static was the Northside Posse. We static with the Redbud crew. We were staticking with the Southside Posse out the project.
All right. So what was what when did you get into like selling drugs or anything like that?
Yeah, when I was 12 years old, 11 and 12 years old, I was going to King Middle School on Kings Highway. I think Kings Highway in Coke Bridge. And a partner of mine, he was in the cabinet course. We was the smallest ones in the school, but we dressed real nice, and he used to bring weed to school. He used to be out the cabinet course. He used to bring little bags of weed to school, and we'll sell joints, in the school, for $1 or so. And I go over my uncle's house. He was big in the speed back then. I go over there and just sell a few 357s, speed pills, some heart, a few other different pills, speed pills. I put them in the bottle and I take them to school. We'll sell them for 50 cents. We'll sell the weed for $1 a joint. All the kids be buying, and we had the finest clothes, Jordans, Sergios, all the different Converses and different color Converses and Oxford shirts and all that. So all the other kids, they was really jealous of us, and we kept bankrolls in our pocket. Back then, bankroll, we had kept $20 worth of bankroll for 11, 12-year-old. But we have $21 bills in our pocket. We go to the kitchen, the cafeteria, and all the girls be around us, and we just, buy all of them food, snacks. And then by the time school get out, we have to leave early because all the dudes, they'll chase us home. But once we cross Union, they know we head to the cabinet courts. They'll turn around because they wasn't coming in the cabinet courts. Because if you wasn't from the courts back then, you couldn't come in the courts.
So that was around like late 80s.
Yeah, that was in 80, 82, 83, up to 80, Northside Posse. I got a new game. We saw that it was like 86, 87, up to 88. Then I ended up going to prison. So I went to prison in 1988, but I was, still hanging out in the Mont Twain area and the Walnut Park area with the Northside Posse, and then I hang out down by the Grand Water Tower. We sold those Stratton, all that area, because we moved from Geraldine down to Stratton, down by the Grand Water Tower. So I grew up down in that area also. So those two areas that I was hanging out in back then, all the way up until the time I went to prison. I was 15 when I went to prison.
All right. So before or around that time, did you get into any of the Bloods and Crip gangs?
No, the Bloods and Crips wasn't out here. The first, before I went to prison in 88, the only time I ever heard of a Blood was in Laclede Town. A Blood had got killed in Laclede Town. That was in 87, the end of 87. That was the first time Bloods and Crips even started hitting St. Louis. I only seen one Crip, before I went to prison, and never heard of a Blood or one in St. Louis until the one got killed that I heard that got killed in Laclede Town. Besides that, it wasn't nobody claiming no Bloods or Crips. They had just started migrating down to St. Louis around this time, 87.
All right. So you went
At
to
that time when I was
no. Go ahead.
So at that time, it was still just all local gangs. Wasn't no
This call is
Bloods
from a
and Crips.
correctional facility and may be monitored and recorded.
All right. So when you went to prison at 15, what was that for?
That was for first degree robbery. I ended up, I was robbing people. I was robbing rental center, you know, cabs, stores. I just started robbing people. Back then, rental center, you ain't have to go through a lot of stuff. You just call them, tell them, bring me a TV out, 4 VCRs and a stereo system. And they just, you have to go through critic checks and none of that. They just pull up with the van, with all the shit in there. I come out the gangway, we get out and open the door, the van door, we just get down on it, take everything, and make them drive off. And then we come right out the gangway, run the stuff right up in my apartment, my house, my apartment where we stayed at. Living with my mother there. So, in the taxi vans, we used to call them to the vacant house. When they show up, we used to rob them right there. The pizza man, we'll order 20 pizza, and they'll bring it. So when they show up, we come out and rob them. And I robbed the confectionery. That's what landed me in prison. I robbed. That's what got me locked up. I ended up being convicted of robbing a taxi cab.
All right. So how long did you get in prison at 15 years old?
I did. They sent me down. They sent me to 10 years. I paid the term. They sent me to 10 years. I ended up doing, they gave me 120-day shock probation. So if I lay down 120 days in prison, they'll release me on probation. But I blew that storm coming through the door because I came through the door tripping, fighting, so. You young, that young, you had to come through the door and prove this. You have to think back then. This was in those late '80s. I'm really a kid coming to prison. So you either you had to come through. You either put some work in as soon as you come through the door, or you gonna either be a predator or some play. I wouldn't really be nobody victim, so I had to come through the door, fight, and saying to myself and, just, getting out there. And I lost my 120-day shot. So the earliest I could get out was like 3 years and 4 months. But I didn't even make that release. I kept catching assaults and a lot of major violations, a lot of misconduct charges, and I blew that. So I had another chance to get out in 7 years. I blew that with 6 years, and I blew that out there. Then they had 7 years. I blew that out there. I ended up having to do the whole 10 years in prison. I actually did 10 years and 3 months because I had 3 months of juvenile time that they didn't credit me for before they certified. So I did 10 years and 3 months on a 10-year sentence.
All right. So at 15 years old, what prison did they send you to?
Well, the first prison I went to was Boonville. Well, Fulton. Fulton had just got built. It was a diagnostic center. They sent me to Fulton. From Fulton, the diagnostic center, they sent me to Boonville in December 1988. I stayed there for 6 months. I called it assault there on the officers and inmates. And they sent me out of there and they tried to send me to Potosi. Potosi had just opened up Potosi Rescue Center, the death row camp. But they said I was too young for them to send me there. They didn't want to send me there, so they elevated my custody level and sent me to Mobley Rescue Center. At that time, that's what it's called now, but back then it was called Missouri Training Center for me. They sent me there. I was there 6 months, caught assault, and got my custody level jacked up even more. They sent me then to Missouri State Penitentiary, and that was a maximum security prison where they had just took the death row inmates out of there and moved them to Potosi Rescue Center, the new prison they had just built. They moved all the death row inmates to Potosi. Then I was in Missouri State Penitentiary, and that's one of the, they labeled that the facility is 47 acres west of the Mississippi, and that was one of the roughest prisons in the country. I stayed there a couple years, kept catching a lot of cases, cost time in prison. Got it ran concurrent in 10 years I was serving. Kept running my time concurrent when I catch new cases. And they ended up sending me to Potosi. And that was due to assault on a guard, an inmate. And I ended up doing like 4 years almost in administrative segregation lockdown before they let me out. So I went from Fulton to Boonville to Mobley to Missouri State Penitentiary, Missouri State Penitentiary to Potosi back to Missouri State Penitentiary. From there I went to Pacific Prison, Missouri Eastern Correctional Center. I got in trouble and went back to Missouri State Penitentiary. And from there I went, I don't even remember where I went. Oh yeah, from there I went to Crossroads Correctional Center when they opened it up, and that's where I went home from in 1988. I was released, and I did every day of my 10-year sentence because I was, tripping the whole 10 years. Well, during that time, my mother had just passed away 11 months before I got out. During that, when she passed away, I didn't even want to go to the street. I gave up, but my family, they encouraged me to just, hey, we got to move on, and come out here, we got you, we gonna support you. So I had plans then to get out and do the right thing, and a lot of plans that I had, when you're in prison, you make a lot of plans, but when you get out, it's a whole different world, especially somebody that grew up in prison, and been in prison all the years. And when you get out, those plans just don't happen the way you plan them to happen. So, you eventually go back to what you know. You end up venturing off in your past. Things ain't working out the way you planned them to work out. And that was the situation with me once I got out. Didn't get a job, try to get work as a paralegal, different other plans that I had, positive plans, become a productive citizen in society, but things just didn't go the way I planned them to go.
So when you went to prison, when you got your time at 15, like how did that make you feel? Did you feel, or how did going into prison make you feel at a young age?
Well, I was, growing up, when I first, when I was a real youth, in the 4th and 5th grade, I used to wouldn't fight back. I wasn't an aggressive person. I was, and I was real small for my age, so I was always getting bullied. They beat me up every day in elementary school, run me home, turn my clothes up. I always had nice clothes. My mother always gave me nice things, but I was always the victim being beat up by the other peers in the school. But, when my mother started telling me, you better start fighting back. If you don't fight back and you come home beat up again, I'm whooping. So once she told me that and I started fighting, that's when things changed for me, because I ended up getting put out of the school that I was in. They put me in another public school. I got put out of that public school. They put me in another one. I was always fighting. I was just stripped. I kept getting put out of all the public schools. So eventually they put me out of all St. Louis public schools. So they put me in bad kids schools, private schools. And I kept getting put out of them over and over and over. So eventually they put me out of all St. Louis private schools under the Board of Special Education for bad kids. And so I had a home tutor at that den for a whole year. I got enough credits to go to high school, but years before, I ended up in a mental hospital. For Hawthorne Children's Psychiatric Mental Hospital for children. And that was when I was 12 years old. I did almost 6 months in that hospital. In the 1982, 1983, because of my behavior problem. My mother started making me fight back, and I just turned into a fight. And always challenging everybody and defending myself, or even just, I just started getting in games. That became a way of life, just fighting. But before that, I wasn't an aggressive person. I was a real passive, non-violent person. And in prison, I became even more violent and aggressive. That's what really changed me. When you take a youth, a juvenile, and send him to one of the most dangerous prisons in the country, he becomes a product of his environment. And that's how I became. To sum it up, you surrounded by lions, tigers, and birds. So you're going to have to end up being a bird.
All right, so either before prison or during prison, when did you see your first murder?
When I got out of prison, that's when I got out and tried to do the right thing, and and things didn't go right for me. So I jumped out in the street because there was a lot of things that I wanted, and my plans wasn't going as fast as I would have liked them to go. So I had to start get off in the lifestyle that I did know how to get money, and start selling dope. And that became, and that was getting me the things that I wanted. I just didn't have no patience, so to provide myself with all the things that I wanted. So I got out of prison, and I'm seeing everybody with chains on, the nice cars, nice clothes. And even though I had support from my family, I wanted my own, and I wanted to be able to have all them things, because that's it, So everybody want to have a nice car, nice things, nice clothes, things like that. So, I started venturing off into drugs, selling drugs. And, another one of my hustles is kiting checks, running credit cards. All of them things became, a way of life for me to hustle and to provide me with the things that I wanted, that I needed.
All right, I'm gonna stop it here because I want to save the next after you get out of prison in '98.
Yeah,
I want to do that one
yeah.
for the next interview.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to break it up. This is all about me growing up and then going to prison. I prison, just in prison as a youth, and then getting out. Now we out, and I get off in the dope game, and that escalated into committing murders and robberies and all of that. So
Right.
that's exactly. I like how you doing that, man. And like I said, and I really appreciate, man, you getting me clear and reaching out, man, to put me on your platform, man, and trying to, help me. But really, it's